Can playing Tetris help your brain recover from PTSD? In life, we can experience awful things that are difficult to cope with. If someone we love suddenly dies, or we're in a road accident. You may relive what happened in your mind or have nightmares. You might feel sad or scared or numb. You might be angry or jumpy, or find it difficult to sleep or to concentrate. You might get headaches, feel sick, tired or dizzy. You might feel like this for a few days or weeks. Then usually you start feeling better. Post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, is a mental health problem. It's when you don't naturally get better. It can have a big effect on your life. About 1 in 3 people who go through a traumatic event get PTSD. Luckily, therapists can help. How? One treatment is called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or EMDR for short. EMDR is a type of therapy. You remember the traumatic event. At the same time, your eyes follow your therapist's finger from side to side, or you listen to clicks in one ear then the other, or your therapist gently taps one hand then the other. These clicks, taps or eye movements are called bilateral stimulation. They happen at the same time as remembering the traumatic event. Scientists know EMDR works. The problem is they don't know how it works. One idea they have about how it works is called the working memory hypothesis. The working memory hypothesis suggests EMDR works like this. Your brain has a limited amount of working memory. That's the space it uses to hold and work with information. You talk about the painful event. At the same time, you do a second task, like following your therapist's finger from side to side. This is the bilateral stimulation we talked about earlier. But this theory suggests this second task doesn't have to be a bilateral stimulation task. It could be anything that uses your working memory. So it could be things like counting or playing Tetris. The theory says what matters is you're asking your working memory to do 2 things at once. This means there isn't enough space left to fully relive the painful event. So the painful event gets reprocessed by your brain into a calmer, less vivid memory. It's a bit like having poor internet speed, and then doing 2 things at the same time on your computer. The internet speed is like your limited working memory. You download a big file at the same time as watching a movie. The big file is you moving your eyes from side to side. The movie is you remembering the painful event. The movie will buffer and pixelate. The picture of the painful event won't be as clear. That's your brain reprocessing the painful event into a calmer, less vivid memory. But there are other ideas about how EMDR works. This is only one idea. Danny Wadi is a scientist at the University of Freiburg in Switzerland. Danny and colleagues wanted to find out, does the working memory hypothesis explain people getting better when they have EMDR? They decided just to focus on the working memory hypothesis, so they didn't test it against other ideas about how EMDR works. They don't answer the question, is the working memory hypothesis the best explanation of how EMDR works? They did a systematic review. In a systematic review, scientists ask a specific question, look for research that has tried to answer that question, check the quality of each study, create a summary of the best answer there is to their question. The scientists searched 2 scientific databases using the words EMDR and working memory. They also looked for studies other scientists had mentioned. They found 111 studies. They checked each one to see if it answered their question. After this, they had 11 studies left. The scientists don't say if they did a quality check of each study. Doing a quality check is an important step in creating a high-quality systematic review. One scientist then went through the 11 studies to pull out information. A second scientist then checked they'd done it correctly. So what did they find? In 8 studies, doing a second task while you think about the painful event seemed to help. In the other 3 studies, there was no difference. But Does that mean the working memory hypothesis explains people getting better? When doing this work, the scientist assumed doing two things at the same time meant people were using their working memory, and that it was the working memory being full that caused the effect. But this might not be true. So these results mean the working memory hypothesis might explain people feeling better, but there could be another explanation. 5 studies looked at what happened if you did a different second task, like playing Tetris, rather than doing bilateral stimulation. 3 studies found these different tasks worked just as well as bilateral stimulation. In the other 2 studies, neither bilateral stimulation nor a different second task seemed to work. The scientist found one study that showed if a working memory task was harder, it had a bigger effect. This is called a dose effect. This study helps support the working memory hypothesis. Strengths of this review include the scientist followed a set of rules called PRISMA. PRISMA is short for the Preferred Reporting Items for Systematic Reviews and Meta-Analyses. Following these rules helps make the work trustworthy. And they are open about many of the limitations of this review. Weaknesses of this review include they decided just to focus on the working memory hypothesis. They didn't test it against other ideas about how EMDR works. The scientists assumed doing two things at the same time meant people were using working memory, which caused the effect. Only one study looked at how much working memory was being used. The authors only looked at 2 databases and may have missed some studies. There aren't many studies. There are fewer with people who have PTSD symptoms and even fewer with people who actually have PTSD. Some studies have small numbers of people in them, and there was only one randomised control trial, the gold standard trial. What might this mean in the real world? This review provides some evidence supporting the idea that EMDR works by the working memory hypothesis. However, it is small. A lot more work needs to be done before we can be confident we can explain how EMDR works. So what needs to happen next? The scientists need to test the working memory hypothesis by comparing people with PTSD thinking about their painful memory at the same time as either doing bilateral stimulation or doing another task that loads working memory. They need to check if the tasks do load working memory, and if so, how much? And does the amount make a difference? Thank you for watching. This video was created using a scientific paper by Danny Wadi and colleagues at the University of Freiburg in Switzerland. The full paper can be found using this link. Visuals and font for this video were produced by Ailsa Baldwin. This research did not get a grant from funding agencies.